here tonight.
Thanks, Paul. I am, can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good. So
You're
now I'm
fine.
going to share a screen, but I'm going to share a screen in such a way that I still get to see my notes. So just bear with me for 30 seconds while I make this happen.
And let me just say that if I wonder if everybody else could mute themselves so that we don't get background noises during the presentation.
Okay, one sec.
Oh, thank you.
Only take a second more. What I'm doing here is I'm sharing a portion of my screen, and I learned how to do that a couple hours ago. So you need to be patient with me just 2 more minutes. Share a screen. Come on, Vickers. Portion of screen. Share. Good. And
He hasn't muted himself.
I haven't muted myself. I'm still working on figuring this out. I'm sorry. I had it working and I rebooted because my computer was slow. And that kind of messed me up, but I'll get there in a second. If you just bear with me for a minute or 2 more.
Okay, I see something now.
Okay, so there's Zoom. There's PowerPoint. Aha. Now,
Got a map in your head all the time, haven't you?
you know, I'm going to give up on this. There.
Oh, good.
What are you looking at? Are you seeing the full screen?
Yes.
My full screen. Okay, very good. Are you seeing my notes over on the right?
No.
Okay, well then this is what I wanted.
Oh, terrific.
I don't know. I stumbled into it.
All right.
The technology sometimes defeats me. So thank you very much for the invitation, Stan, and for the more than kind introduction, Paul. So my topic is Easter traditions. And so we will begin with Easter bunnies and Easter eggs. I read this morning that Cadbury make 500 million cream eggs every year for Easter. And now there's quite a thought. I grew up with a tradition where I got some new clothes for Easter, and Easter bonnets were the thing for the girls. And but my favorite Easter tradition is hot cross buns. But if you wanted to know about traditions like hot cross buns and Easter eggs, I'm hunching you wouldn't have invited me, because you can learn much more than I know about all of these sort of extra Christian religious, non-religious traditions by Googling it. Just Google Easter traditions and you'll find it all. I'm a preacher, and what I know about Easter has to do with Jesus and his death on Good Friday on a cross and his resurrection that we celebrate on Easter Sunday. And I'm going to share a kind of combination of some of the things about the story, the Easter story, and I'm going to combine it with the fact that I've been privileged to be in the Holy Land quite a few times over the years. My first visit to the Holy Land was in 1990 when I was a student studying theology at Wycliffe College in Toronto. And I've been back 6 times since. So I now have a whole bunch of photographs, and quite a lot of my time has been spent there. I've been taking groups to the Holy Land. I've taken 6 or 7 groups, and I'm Paul mentioned I was going to take another group this fall. It's likely now April 2022, actually. We're on to Plan E because of COVID. I postponed from spring 2020 to fall, to spring 2021 to fall 2021. And I now have about 30 people waiting for April 2022, God willing. When the Apostle Paul was asked to explain what he thought was the core of the Christian faith,
Just
this
one.
is what he said. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm only listening, Johnny.
I'm trusting my mic is working. And when Paul was asked to summarize what he believed to be the important tradition, this is what he said. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received. So he says, I'm handing on a tradition. I didn't make this up. I'm giving you what I was given. So this is the core Easter tradition, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scriptures, and that he appeared. And then there's this list of people. So there you have the sort of scene set in 4 scenes, really. Christ died, Christ was buried, he was raised on the third day, and then he appeared, first to Peter and then to the 12 and then to 500 brothers and sisters all alive at the same time. And last of all, Paul says to him. And so if we're thinking about Easter traditions, the core events that I've just described and the places where they happened would be the oldest of the Easter traditions. By the 3rd century, that's a long time ago, 1700 years ago, this week that we began today was already called Holy Week. So today is Palm Sunday. And the week between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday has been called Holy Week for at least 1700 years. And what happened was the early Christians began to gather at the places where these things happened and to commemorate the events of Holy Week. And soon Christians from other parts of the world began to go to the Holy Land. The most significant early pilgrimage that we know of was when Saint Helena, the mother of Constantine, went there in 326 AD. And so we have diaries of pilgrims from the 3rd and 4th centuries talking about their observation of the various things that took place in Holy Week in Jerusalem. And so I'm going to sort of take you through those places. So this map that you're looking at is a map of the old city of Jerusalem. And this is the Temple Mount, and that's the temple. This is the Roman fortress Antonia, where Pontius Pilate would have hung out, certainly had a battalion of soldiers there. Pilate also had another location over here. And this is the wall that went around the city, the outside wall. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Back we go. So the story of Holy Week begins over here on the right-hand side in a town called Bethany. And Jesus is staying with his friends in Bethany. And on Palm Sunday, there's a parade, like a grand parade that starts at the top of the Mount of Olives. And Jesus and his companions walk down the mountainside, through the Kidron Valley, out the other side, and into Jerusalem through this gate. So down the hill, and as he's traveling, riding on a donkey, the crowds are cheering and welcoming Jesus as Messiah. And on that first day, on the Palm Sunday, he then went into the temple, walked around, had a look, and then went back out and went home to his friend's house in Bethany. So this shows the route from Bethany down through the Garden of Gethsemane and through the Kidron Valley to the temple. And all the rest of the events take place around this city. Over here is Mount Zion, where the Last Supper took place, and where Caiaphas, the high priest, had his prison. And here's where King Herod hung out. And this is the place where Jesus was crucified. That's where Golgotha is. So I'm now going to walk you through. So Palm Sunday, and of course, this story has stirred art and artists, poets and songwriters, musicians all through time. This is the walk today. This is what it's like walking down the hill from the top of the Mount of Olives, going into the holy city of Jerusalem. In the distance, you see the golden dome there. That is the Dome of the Rock, which sits pretty much where the temple used to be. So this would have been the route that Jesus and his disciples followed when they went from Bethany into Jerusalem. As you walk through the valley, you pass graves. There's Jewish graves on the eastern slope, Christian graves at the bottom of the valley, and Muslim graves on the western slope. There's yours truly, sort of part way down. You can see Jewish graves in the background. And over here, that's the wall of the temple. This is looking at the western side. So these are Christian graves in the bottom. You can see crosses on those graves. And up in here are Muslim graves. And again, that's the wall of the city. This is the entrance to the city that Jesus probably went through. And there's another view showing the temple from a little higher up, or what would have been the temple. This whole platform is called the Temple Mount. So on the Monday of Holy Week, the next day, Jesus goes back to the temple. Ooh, what's happened here? So on the Monday, that would be tomorrow, Jesus goes back to the temple and he throws the money changers out of the temple. And that set of events is what set in motion, according to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the decision of the religious authorities to have Jesus killed. This is Karl Bloch's painting of the event. This is a model that just shows what the temple looked like. This is a 1/20th scale model. But there you see Fortress Antonia, the Roman headquarters. And this is the religious temple, the court of the Gentiles. In here, the court of the Gentiles, and then the court of the priests. And in that building, the holy place and the Holy of Holies. This is what the Temple Mount looks like today. It's beautiful, serene, restful, olive trees, and beautiful buildings. And that golden domed building is called the Dome of the Rock. It's a Muslim place of worship. This is the building up close. And it is every bit as beautiful as you see outside, inside. It's closed to visitors these days on the inside, though I was able to be inside a couple times lately. And this picture shows the beauty of the interior space. It's decorated with mosaic, actually most of the mosaic made by Armenian Christians. It is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, is the inside of the Dome of the Rock. This is the Muslim Al-Aqsa Mosque that's also on that Temple Mount. It's one of the larger mosques in the world, and it is truly a beautiful place as well. This building is itself built in 700 AD. So this building is 1,300 years old and counting. So again, a little map to orient you. We've been looking around the Temple Mount. That's where Jesus went on Palm Sunday, looked around, went back on Monday and threw the money changers out. And then he continued to go here on the Tuesday and the Wednesday of Holy Week, teaching and preaching. And so the next major event is Thursday. So on Thursday of Holy Week is the Last Supper. And we call that day Maundy Thursday. Many Christians call it Maundy Thursday. This, of course, is Leonardo da Vinci's famous picture of the Last Supper. In reality, they'd have been laying on the ground, reclining to eat. Da Vinci sort of pictured Jesus as Italian, I think. But this is the great event of Thursday. We call it Maundy Thursday from the Latin mandatum novum, a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you, because it was on this day that Jesus taught the church that loving one another is how the world will know that he is Lord. This building that I'm showing a picture of here with a bunch of pilgrims milling around is the building that's built on the site of the Last Supper on Mount Zion. This building itself is older than the Crusades, and it stands on the same site. So just picture this as the place of the Last Supper. Probably not as elegant then. So that night after dinner, after the dinner was concluded, Jesus went to a place he loved to go that was serene and quiet and beautiful and restful, the Garden of Gethsemane, a place where there was an olive press and an orchard full of olive trees. And what you're seeing here are ancient olive trees. These trees are almost 2,000 years old. The church has kept planting and replanting them over the years so that there'd always be olives here, to recall the place where Jesus prayed on the night before he was handed over to suffering and death. There's this new building on top of it, but it's built on top of the ruins of older buildings that date to the 3rd century. This is the Church of the All Nations. And in the courtyard around it are olive trees. And inside is this stone, which is the stone where Jesus was praying. And the scriptures say he was praying to the point where he was sweating blood as he said, Father, I don't want to die, but nevertheless, your will be done, not mine. So Jesus sort of gives himself up to dying in our place and in this place. While he's praying, this is Caravaggio's The Taking of the Christ, famous piece of art. Again, an Italian artist that thinks the Romans were probably dressed like Italian soldiers, but the idea of a violent arrest of a preacher while he's praying is captured well here. Jesus praying in the garden and arrested. He's then tried, and Jesus actually faces a series of trials. And the scriptures sort of tell the story. It's all done in the night against Jewish law. He's tried first by Annas, the high priest. He's then tried by Caiaphas, the high priest, the son of the high priest, and some of the Sanhedrin. Then he's tried by the full meeting of the Sanhedrin. Now, those first 3 trials took place during the night. And then in the morning, he's taken to Pontius Pilate. Pilate tries to get rid of him and sends him off to Herod, who sends him back to Pilate, who condemns him. So there's this series of show trials. This is that first picture. This image is from 1803 at Madrazo, a picture of Jesus being tried before Annas, the first of his trials. Today, if you go onto the Mount Zion, you can go to the church that's built over the place where Caiaphas's house was, where the first 4 trials took place. And these stones lead up that path. These stones are Roman, and so you could say these are steps that our Lord actually walked on. There's the modern church. It's called St. Peter's in Gallicantu, and it's built over the site where Jesus was tried by Caiaphas, the high priest, and kept imprisoned overnight. Then he's taken to Pilate at Pontius Pilate's location. This is an 1881 painting. There are 10,000 oil paintings of Jesus before Pilate. This illustration just shows where he probably was tried. Fortress Antonia. This is the Roman fortress beside the temple. But Pilate tries to get rid of the responsibility. So he sends Jesus to see King Herod Antipas, who's the Tetrarch of Galilee. And since Jesus was a resident of Galilee, Pilate thought he could sort of fob Jesus off on Antipas. But Antipas insisted Jesus do a miracle, and Jesus refused to sing for his supper. So Herod sent him back to Pilate. So back he goes to Fortress Antonia, another picture. This is a model, of course. The building is in ruins. However, in the basement of the ruins, on this stone pavement where you can see we're standing, this is thought by many to be the place where Jesus stood to be tried, the stone pavement. And you'll remember the story in the Bible where the soldiers gamble for Jesus' clothing to see who should get his clothing rather than tear the garment. And this is a Roman dice game incised into the floor of this, the ruins of this Roman fortress. So Jesus now is taken from the place where he's condemned to the place where he's crucified. And the road, that way, is called the Via Dolorosa, or the Way of Sorrow. And the route has 14 stops, 14 places along the way where Christians have traditionally commemorated the events on the way to his crucifixion. And while the actual streets that Jesus walked on are probably 30 feet below the level, the grade of today, the route roughly follows the route that Jesus would have walked from the place where he was condemned, which we're confident we know of, to the place where he was crucified, which we're quite certain of. This is the route that pilgrims follow, showing the stations. So up here is Fortress Antonia, where he was condemned, and the various stations along the path following the route to the place where he was crucified. This is a Good Friday scene, which kind of gives you an indication of how many people crowd this route on Good Friday. And every Friday throughout the year, there's a Good Friday procession. Not numbers like this, but still it's a busy place. Any Friday of the year, it's a busy place to be, is the Via Dolorosa. There are 2.8 billion Christians in the world, and an awful lot of them make their way to Jerusalem. This is a group that I was part of, and this is not a Good Friday. This is a middle of the year, April Friday. And along the way, there are places where you can stop. So this is the 5th station of the cross. How's my time? Can someone indicate how my time is going? Are you all muted? I hope it's working. I have no
I think about 8 minutes left, Vickers.
All right. Well, I might go a little over. I'll try to speed it up.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're walking through the Via Dolorosa, and eventually you arrive at the place where Jesus was crucified and was buried. Both are contained within one ancient building. This is what we call the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Here's a group of pilgrims arriving at that church. And here Jesus was crucified. This is a famous Rubens painting of the crucifixion. This one building contains both the place where Jesus was crucified and the place where he was buried. And they weren't under a roof, of course, at the time, and they were separate buildings for many years. But that's another story for another day. Inside, here is the place of crucifixion. In behind this crowd of people, there's an altar. And here is right beside it. And if you look through the glass here, you'll see a glass enclosed case. And that's the exposed top of Golgotha, the rock, and that's the rock. So this is the mountain, the exposed bedrock at the place where Jesus was crucified. He was taken down from the cross and quickly anointed for burial. This stone wears out about every 300 years and they put a new one down. But this is traditionally understood to be the place where Jesus' body was wrapped by Joseph of Arimathea and carried to his close by grave where Jesus was quickly buried. The way graves worked in the first century, now this is an upper class grave. Remember, Jesus is being buried in a borrowed grave that belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. This is how the wealthy were buried. There's an inner room where the body is actually buried laying on a shelf wrapped in linen. There's an anteroom, and then there's an entrance you have to stoop to get in through, and a rolling stone closing the doorway. Later, all this extra stone was carved away, and the tomb of Jesus and the anteroom enclosed in a building, and I'll show you that in a moment. But this is what the grave probably looked like when it was first dug. This is only 50 feet from the grave where Jesus was buried, but it was recently uncovered. This little building within a building is where the grave of Jesus is enclosed. And people line up truly for hours to have their 30 seconds inside there. You line up to go into this little building. And here are people going past through that entranceway into the actual tomb itself. And this, underneath that marble shelf, is the stone upon which Jesus was buried. This piece of stone gets replaced every 200 or 300 years because it wears out from people rubbing it. Of course, if the story ended with Jesus' death, there would be no Christian faith and the story would have ended and never been told. But Jesus didn't remain buried. Jesus on the third day was raised from the dead. Now, that's something nobody can prove. Art and music and tell the story better than preachers. This is Rubens' interpretation of the resurrection of Jesus. I would simply say to you, if Jesus was not raised from the dead, it makes no sense that 11 of the 12 disciples, original apostles, gave up their lives rather than deny the story, because 11 of the 12 were martyred. Only John died of old age. At another place in the Holy Land, I found an ancient grave with a rolling stone. This is not the grave of Jesus, but this shows what the grave of Jesus would have looked like with a rolling stone out front. The resurrected Jesus appeared to his church repeatedly, again and again and again. And the most famous of those resurrection appearances is told in John 21, where Jesus restores Peter to faith. He appears, Jesus is on the shore. The men are out fishing. They've given up and they've gone fishing. And and they see a man cooking fish on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And Peter jumps overboard and swims for shore. And there on the beach here, Jesus forgives Peter for denying him 3 times and restores him to ministry. So this is a place where I always spend time with my groups of pilgrims, and sometimes I get them to sit on a rock and take off their socks and shoes and dangle their feet in the water and kind of try to place themselves in the place of Peter and the 12, meeting Jesus, the risen Jesus for the first time. There's another scene, someone else. Christians from all over the world have spent hours and hours just sitting by the beach here thinking about how Jesus' death has changed everything and how his resurrection has changed their lives. And there, I think I am done, Stan. I hope if there's questions that there's time for questions.
All right.
And I'll figure out how to stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes.